Amazing, amazing, amazing. Welcome, everyone. This event, this webinar is for advisors by advisors. My esteemed colleague Andy and I have been advisors just like you for over 3 decades. We've walked in your shoes and we get what you're going through. Today's topic might sound a little bit blunt. We apologize, but not really. Why you suck at prospecting. But the truth is, most advisors have never been taught how to prospect the right way. So here's the good news. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to fix it. So we get it. Prospecting often feels frustrating, discouraging, but this introductory session is about the big picture. We're going to preview 3 pillars of prospecting: referrals, cold outreach, and follow-up. And then later on, we're going to go deeper into each individual one. So think of today as the foundation that everything else is going to be built on. Andy?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I want to be clear here. Yes, we picked a provocative title here, but that was really just to grab your attention. The fact that you're here doesn't mean you are bad at your job or that you really suck at prospecting in the literal sense. It just means you're ambitious and open-minded enough to get better. The best advisors sharpen their craft constantly. So when we say why you suck, what we really mean is here's where you can sharpen the blade and stop sucking the joy out of being an advisor. So, as I said, this is kind of like sharpening a knife. If you don't, it gets dull and suddenly you can't even slice a tomato. It feels impossible. So, prospecting works in the same way. So, this isn't about gimmicks, it's about building a system that keeps your calendar full without burning you out. All right, Ermos, back over to you. Let's dive into this.
All right. Over the next 3 sessions, we're going to do one thing. We're going to turn activity into appointments because I know that's what you want. Because being busy isn't necessarily being productive. It's not necessarily mean that you're actually booking those meetings. So here's the roadmap. First thing we're going to talk about is referrals, how to ask for them that spark specific introductions, and most importantly, without begging. How to do a proper cold outreach by starting permission-based conversations that actually earn replies and engagement. And then follow up. So we're going to turn the not now into, hey, let's book with value that moves the needle. But today is just the preview. You'll leave with the exact words and a simple cadence you can deploy immediately. Pro tip for today: prospecting isn't about pressure, but it is about precision and persistence. So when you're talking to the right people in the right way at the right time, meetings become the natural next step. Andy?
Yeah, so just to be clear, we're just scratching the surface here. We're going to have follow-up series where we dive into each one of these pillars, but we're starting with the major concepts here, right? And it's understanding that prospecting isn't about pressure here. It's about precision and persistence, as Ermos mentioned. So, when you talk to the right people in the right way at the right time, meetings become more natural or become the natural next step. So, prospecting isn't one skill, it's a system. And if you're strong in one area but weak in another, your results could start collapsing. So it's like building a three-legged stool. If one leg is missing, well, the whole thing kind of tips over. And advisors with all three of these pillars are more likely to double or triple more appointments than those that don't. So don't treat this as optional. Master all three, and you will win on consistency.
Loving that, Andy. But why do advisors struggle with prospecting? Every advisor has, battled prospecting. So if you see yourself on this slide, it doesn't mean that you're broken. It just simply means that you're human. It's okay. The good news is you can install better systems. And here's what some of the things that I see in the field. Fear of rejection becomes hesitation. And then the hesitation then becomes avoidance. And then like, you don't need thicker skin. What you do need is just a better frame. Reliance on referrals alone often creates what I call is a pipeline whiplash. So when things are going great and it's flowing, it's amazing, but they're absolutely brutal when they're not flowing at all, right? Quitting too early on follow-up leaves deals on the table, plain and simple. Most advisors stop right before the compounding kicks in. Interesting stat, Andy: 44% of advisors will quit after a single follow up, which I refer to as one and done. Yet, roughly 80% of conversations happen after 5 or more touches. Imagine that. Most advisors stop after one, but the reality is data shows that it takes 5 to 8 touches for them to actually have a conversation. So it's no wonder that a lot of advisors struggle with prospecting. Also, prospecting doesn't need to feel like it's punishment. It rewards repetition. It rewards persistence. So when your follow-ups keep adding value, which we're going to show you how to do, that no turns into not yet. And then the not yet turns into let's talk. So, how are we going to fix this? By reframing the rejection. It's not about you, it's about timing, it's about fit, it's about clarity. We need to become detached from the outcome, and we're going to teach you how to do that in this session. This is not personal, and we should never take it personally. What we want to do is stabilize the pipeline with warm introductions plus cold outreach. So that way you have two ways to start building on your AUM. Value added touches across multiple channels over 6 to 8 weeks is effectively what we're looking to do here. And the Flex playbook makes this easier by steering the conversation to what prospects care about most. And this is where I'm going to turn it over to Andy.
Yeah, and just to pick up on that Flex playbook, it's not something we're going to really dive in here, but the Flex playbook, really Flex stands for financial, lifestyle, and emotional exploration. And that's a cornerstone foundational concept of everything that we coach to and teach to. To touch upon that whole quitting thing, the one thing I've learned in this industry and throughout my life is quitting becomes a habit. And that's why we really encourage to stay the course, be consistent, make things a habit, and then you're less likely to quit and get progress. What makes people want to quit certainly made me want to quit in the beginning stages of becoming an advisor was the rejection. But if you think of rejection as like going to the gym, the first workouts hurt, but that resistance is what makes you start stronger. And speaking of that resistance, that's what builds up your resistance. So prospecting discomfort works the same way as lifting those weights that leave you feeling sore and hurt sometimes and not wanting to work out the next day. But it's those people that persevere and still show up and do their best consistently are the ones that are going to get that result. You know, just lifting weights here and there and hoping that all of a sudden you're going to build muscle and hope you're going to see results is crazy because hope is not a strategy. And waiting is like planting seeds and praying for rain, right? And for us, that whole flex mentality is what is really your irrigation system, right? That makes real referrals flow. So these aren't personal flaws that you have just because you're not doing everything right. They're process flaws. And process flaws are fixable. And that's what we're here to do is to help you fix it, not just on this, but in the subsequent webinars that you'll have access to if you join CAA, where we will be talking about each one of those three pillars. But let's talk about the cost of not fixing this problem, Ermos.
Absolutely. So, the real price of weak prospecting, it's not just missed appointments. It's the compounding damage that happens over time as well, right? I mean, think about it. You have an empty calendar because you have an empty pipeline, right? So, no conversations today means no clients next month. As we know, our process takes weeks, sometimes months to move a prospect through their pipeline for them to become a client at the end. So if you have nothing in your pipeline today, you're not going to get any business for the next several weeks. So it's very important to keep that pipeline full. Also, when the pipeline's not full, we lose confidence. And when we lose confidence, imposter syndrome will start to seep in, and that's when you know you're in trouble. So it's important that we prevent the doubt from flooding in, and we don't want you to start second guessing your every move because we get it. Prospecting pain compounds, but so does the prospecting discipline, which is what we want you to do. And this is why we install systems and don't rely on just streaks or even just luck. A consistent prospecting system protects your calendar, your cash flow, and your confidence. But the bottom line is this: you don't have a sales problem. What you do have is a systems problem. And the good news is a systems problem can be fixed. Andy?
Yeah, absolutely. And that system and that process is kind of like fuel, right? It's your fuel for your business. Think of it as like it's kind of like trying to run a car with no gas. It might have a very nice vehicle, the nicest in the world, but it doesn't have fuel, you're going to go nowhere fast, or you're certainly not going to get where you're going, and certainly not fast enough. And what the cost of that is, that hidden cost, is confidence. And when you lose that, the numbers decline even faster. We know this. Statistically, advisors who prospect inconsistently see 40% lower year over year growth than those who do it weekly. So, what does that mean? Tying back to what Ermos just said, when that prospecting breaks down, when that system is not there, it hurts your business, it hurts your mindset, and even you and your family. And that cost is enormous. Hermos?
Yeah, so we're gonna go into the fixes right now, and but the important thing is when you run these three pillars with precision, your calendar will fill up, your income will stabilize, and your confidence will go through the roof. Andy?
Yeah, as I mentioned, it's kind of like a three-legged stool or a tripod, whatever. With three legs, it's stable. Remove one, and it falls over. So we don't want you to just think of one of these things being important. They're all important. Advisors that are strong in all three pillars here, all three foundational things, are 2 to 3 times more likely to book first meetings than those who only rely on one. And what we see a lot is advisors grasping at all kinds of things. Don't chase all these shiny objects. Master the fundamentals first. And the fundamentals are the things you see on your screen: referrals, outreach, and follow up. So let's dive into pillar number one: referrals.
Referrals. Everyone loves referrals, right? But hey, there's a very important distinction that we have to bring up here. You should never be asking for referrals. What you should be asking for are introductions, because referral implies that someone becomes a client, and that's a pretty big commitment that you're asking of someone, is to give you a client. However, and just a simple introduction implies a conversation, a chat, right? It's a much easier ask to ask for an introduction than it is to ask for a referral. So I implore you, don't do stuff like this. Mr. Mr. and Mrs. Client, who do you know who could use my services? Or I'm looking to build my business. Could you provide a couple of referrals that I can speak to? First of all, that makes it very awkward and it comes across as begging. So you're actually lowering yourself in the status here. And this is not a good look. It also ruins a good meeting when you end it like this. I mean, think about it. You sit down with your client, you have an amazing 45 minutes, hour conversation, you're laughing, you're talking about stories, you're going over their portfolios, everything is great, they love you, you love them. And then the last 3 to 5 minutes of the meeting, you are making it very awkward by asking for referrals. You've just ruined a really good meeting by ending it that way. So do this instead. Position introductions, but position them very clearly. For example, if someone has an interest in retirement, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, if you know someone thinking about retirement and are also worried about outliving their money, feel free to introduce us. No pressure, but if you find somebody that I can help with, I'd love to do it. Here's the key to actually getting more referrals. Because believe it or not, your client probably wants to refer more people to you. They just don't know how to do it. So don't expect your client to spend time figuring out and writing an email or remembering to make a phone call, because it's not going to happen, right? Instead, make it very easy for them. Draft the introduction email for them. All they have to do is copy, paste, send. That's it. Your clients won't know how to properly introduce you anyway, so why are we relying on them to actually do that? This, doing it for them, will actually save your clients time, and you get the proper introduction, which is what you need to connect with that potential referral introduction, right? This will greatly improve your ability to connect with new people. The bottom line is this: remove as much friction as possible for your client to give you those introductions. So this very next strategy works extremely well. So I recommend that everyone grab a pen and paper and write this down. Okay. It works with clients and it actually works with strangers. Whenever you go to an event, whether it's a networking event, a wedding, it doesn't matter what it is. A common question that we often get from people, as common conversations do, is, hey, how's work? Or how's business? You know the question is coming, yet most advisors are completely unprepared to answer that question. Here's a wrong response. The wrong response, which I used to do all the time is, hey, business is great. I'm really, really busy because my business is growing, right? I get it, guys. We want to come across as being successful, in demand. But here's the problem with what we just did. We just implied that we are too busy to accept referrals because we just told this person, I'm just really, really busy. So if they know you're busy and you barely have time to keep up, of course they're not going to give you referrals. So that's a counterintuitive way to do it. Here's the right way to do it. Business is great. I just brought on two new clients this week. They were both referrals from clients. I love being able to help friends and family members of my clients. So, what does this message now communicate? Well, one, you are good enough to be referable and competent enough to be referable. You are busy, successful, but not too busy to take on new clients. So, that's a win. And you're open for business. You are accepting referrals. So, in this scenario, if you're talking to an existing client, they will immediately start to think who they can refer to you. It's human nature. They're starting to wonder, well, why haven't I referred anyone to my advisor of late, right? Worst case scenario, you've planted a referral seed for the future. So there's no downside on this, only upside. Also, when it comes to following up on client mentions, when you're talking to somebody, or even in a meeting, for instance, when a client hints at someone, the last thing you want to do is pounce in that moment. What you really want to do is write that name down and then circle back later. Because here's what we want you to do. It's called a soft permission ask. So, Mr. and Mrs. Client, earlier you mentioned that you golf a lot with Jeff and George. They sound like really good people. Would you be comfortable introducing us just just for an initial chat? If I can help them, great. If not, I will send them some resources and point them in the right direction. But keep in mind, there's no pressure. I can even provide a short email that you can simply copy and paste to make it super easy for you as well. Now, at this point, if they say yes, they're open to that introduction. What you would say is, okay, perfect. Easiest is an email from you, CCing me, and then I'll reply with something helpful they can use whether we meet or not. I'll even draft the introduction email and send it over to you. As I mentioned before, remove the friction as much as possible. Make it super, super easy for your clients to introduce you. Andy?
Wow. Guys, if you think that was informative, wait till you actually come to the webinar that's just about referrals. That was a lot of gold there. The one thing that I'll just pull out of there that I think is so critical in the difference between a referral and an introduction is when it's a referral, you're not really part of the equation. When it's an introduction, you're in the mix. You're involved. You have some control in that what happens next, right? And it's interesting. You would think that the first thing that we would address is cold calling or cold outreach because most people think in prospecting, this is it, prospecting at a base level, calling a lead, cold calling, whatever. However, we're making the assumption that most of the people watching this already have some clients. Therefore, the logical step would be to tap into people who already know, like, and trust you, to put you on the radar of people who know, like, and trust them. A former mentor of mine said, Andy, if you could leverage all the people that you know and like and trust you and get them to introduce even to a small amount of people that know, like, and trust them, you will have all the clients you could ever need, right? And this ties into the whole adage of it's not what you know, it's who you know, because its roots lie in that long-standing belief in the importance of personal relationships and in professional success. And we try to reframe and we get caught up into about closing clients, right, Ermos? But what we're doing really is opening relationships, right? So think about that. And the more that you can focus on that, and let's face it, the people that are your clients are most likely the people that you want more clients of, right? So if you can use a fishing analogy here, it is like fishing. If you say you want to catch something, you'll get nothing. But if you say, I want a bass in this spot with this lure, you'll get results. And you already have caught some bass. You know what they like, you know what they want, and you know where to find them if you're tapping into your network already, right? So don't ask for referrals. Create conditions where introductions feel natural and you're fishing for the right thing in the right place with the right lures or bait, I guess. I mean, that sounds kind of bad, but I don't mean it that way. Ermos, let's dive into pillar number two, cold outreach.
All right, some cold outreach. So one of the biggest mistakes that I see advisors do here is, they're reaching out to somebody and they're trying to book a meeting immediately. This is a big mistake. You haven't earned the right to ask for a meeting yet. So I implore you, do not push for a meeting, but instead, what you're looking for is to pull a response. We're just looking for engagement. It should when you're reaching out to somebody, you should not come across as being a telemarketer. So by using permission-based openers, you can lead with curiosity, and also you can keep it human. Strangers will become conversations, and then conversations will become appointments, which is what we actually want. So here's an example of an outreach that we use for our advisors when it comes to LinkedIn. So the example is this. So hey prospect, not sure if this is for you. I work with corporate executives just like you who want to retire without downsizing lifestyle. I created a one-page checklist on how to avoid paying unnecessary tax. Would that be useful? If not, don't worry about it. No worries. Now, think about this message now. So first of all, we personalize. Hey, name, prospect, Andy. Hey, Andy. Not sure if this is for you. So right away, it's kind of like you're taking it away. I work with corporate executives just like you, so I am already implying now that whatever I'm doing is working for corporate executives, and I'm reaching out to corporate executives. So it's basically social proof. I'm working with corporate executives, and it's already working, who want to retire without downsizing lifestyle. So that could be a potential pain point. This is the important one. I created a one-page checklist on how to avoid paying unnecessary tax. Unnecessary tax implies you are already paying taxes that you probably shouldn't be paying. So that increases the whole FOMO thing, right? Fear of missing out. Well, what kind of taxes am I paying that I shouldn't be paying? And then you end with, would that be useful? You're just asking the question. So would it be useful if you found out ways to save tax? No, actually, I love paying too much tax. Well, of course, they're gonna want to. They're gonna want that resource. But if not, no worries, no pressure. So again, you're doing your best to not come across as being salesy, and that, believe it or not, actually makes them want to engage even more. The goal here is not to book appointments, but to get an engagement. You want some sort of response, because once that first response comes in, the next response is far more likely to happen. And then two, three, four, five responses later, guess what? You got your meeting. But if you went straight for the jugular for the meeting right away, you're never going to get it. So we got to warm people up. We got to build rapport. We got to build trust. We got to build confidence, and then the meetings will come. Andy?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you brought this up again on a coaching call we had earlier with some of our members about you know, remembering that the less you try to sell, the more sales you'll make, right? And this is so true. So true. A big aha moment for me, right? You're not imposing yourself on somebody. You're not pitching. I hate the word pitch. It sucks. That's the old ABCs of closing. We don't do that anymore. It doesn't work. So you're not imposing, you're not selling, you're not doing all that kind of stuff. You're inviting people to a conversation. You're inviting people to learn and to knowledge based on what the generally people are going to be interested in, paying less tax or being 100% sure they're on the best path possible to get to their goals. And what are those goals, by the way? What are your dreams? That mind shift changes everything. And when you start getting comfortable with treating conversations like that, I think we talk about act like a financial therapist all the time. And remember, you're a person first and an advisor second. That starts to reduce call reluctance and anxiety about calling anybody or speaking to anybody. You don't have that fear. And why is that important? Call reluctance is the number one reason most advisors fail in their first 2 years when they're really trying to build their book of business. We talk to advisors all the time who say, when we remind them of these things, they're like, oh God, I used to do that. I used to prospect on a regular basis. That's what got me to this place. I just got to get back to the basics. Well, there's nothing more basic than mastering follow up and cold outreach and referrals. Ermos?
All right. So the next one we're going to talk about is following up. Mentioned this before, one and done is not a winning strategy. We know from data, industry data, that it takes 5 to 8 touches before you actually have a sincere conversation. So you need to be persistent. You need to continue to follow up. However, you have to follow up in the right way. One of the worst things, this kind of drives me crazy, is when advisors reach out to their prospects and they're just checking in. Well, you know what? When you're just checking in, it's all about you, right? You're basically asking them, "Are you ready now? Like, are you ready to become a client?" That's, to me, that's what just checking in is. So here's what to say instead of just checking in. Provide something of value every single time. So if I'm reaching out to somebody that I'm kind of warming up, and maybe this might be your second or third touch, I would rather lead with value. So for instance, saw a tax update that could impact retirement income. Do you want this 60-second summary? Or I have a one-page social security timing checklist. Would you like me to send it over? But this one's my favorite, and this one works the best. Now, they all work, but this is one of many cadences. But I like this one the best because it really is the most impactful. So an example that I would use is this. So if I'm reaching out to a dentist, I would say something along the lines of, there's two options that most dentists are talking about right now. A, saving tax during retirement, versus B, how to maximize their exit from their business. Which one are you leaning toward? Because I want to make sure I send you the right resources. This is so powerful because it makes it easy for them, because you're giving them a choice. So instead of asking, what are you worrying about? What keeps you up at night? You're giving them a choice of A or B, so they're more likely to actually answer it. But more importantly, it's identifying a potential pain point that they want to solve. And this helps you, because if they pick one over the other, now you know that that's an actual pain point of your prospect. So going back again, 5 to 8 purposeful touches turn not now into, okay, let's talk. And every follow up needs a because. I am following up because you mentioned you want to save tax, right? If you give no reason, then there's no reason to respond. Andy?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll sort of boil it down here, or at least expand a little bit on what Ermos said. We've all heard the famous saying, fortune is in the follow-up. Well, that's only 75% or maybe even 55% the truth. The second part of that is the fortune is in the follow-up, but only if you add value, right? Following up, and especially calling somebody and saying, I'm just calling to follow up. Well, to me, this may be blunt. That's a big FU to the sale, right? Like, follow up. People can smell it a mile away, and sometimes they don't even know why that triggers them. But following up basically means I'm calling to sell you something, or I have an agenda. You don't want that. You want it to be natural. You want to be, as I said, a person first. So your tone, your brand, your demeanor, the way you carry yourself is really important, because that's what makes you unique. That's what makes you different than somebody else. That's your snowflake moment. Your follow up is your fingerprint, right? And done well, it makes you unique and memorable. Done poorly, which is generic, cold, formulaic, it makes you utterly forgettable. Ermos, what can we do here to get people at least starting to do something rather than nothing?
Yeah, I mean, grab a pen and paper. Action will always beat intention. So the first thing that you should do right now is just write down 3 clients that you can ask for introductions this week. Not like next month, not 2 months from now, like this week, maybe even tomorrow. Which 3 clients do you feel, trust you the most and is probably the most ideal fit for your niche if you have one, right? Write
Mhm.
their names down now. The second one is draft one permission-based cold opener. We've gone through several today, so hopefully you wrote those down. If not, this video or this webinar will be recorded and posted in CAA. And then the third one is block 30 minutes tomorrow for those calls. I can't emphasize enough. Like, this sounds so simple, and we use this with our advisors that we coach, and it is like life changing. And I'm not being hyperbolic, by the way. So a lot of times we wake up in the morning and we have the best intentions, right? Oh, I want to make X amount of calls. I want to, prospect. I want to follow up on all these leads that I have. And then guess what happens? Emails pour in, you get a phone call, you get distracted. Next thing you know, the whole day is gone and you haven't made a single prospecting call. If you block something in your calendar, you have no excuse. So block 30 minutes tomorrow to follow up on your leads because we don't want you to leave this presentation with ideas. We want you to leave with appointments. Andy?
Yeah, absolutely. And the only way that you can't write down three clients to ask for introductions this week is if you don't have three clients. Otherwise, you have zero excuses, right? And permission-based openers, go back and listen to what we're saying here. I almost gave you a few. Come into CAA. We've got all kinds of stuff in there that Ermos and I have posted since the inception of CAA. But remember this, right? Advisors who block time for prospecting are 60% more likely to hit those activity goals than those who just wing it. You've got to parse out that time to do your little workout every single day. And if you consistently do this, there is almost no way you can't see results. But remember, that's not necessarily going to happen overnight. So you got to be patient. This world of instant gratification, leave that. That's for TikTok and teenagers, okay? You're adults here, right? It takes time, and anything worth having is worth working for. Don't overthink this. Just take action because action builds confidence. Confidence builds momentum. And I got to tell you something. You know this, Ermos, and anybody that we've coached. Momentum is much more powerful than speed. And that starts with action. And more importantly, action over outcomes. Ermos?
Yeah, so I have problems, Andy. I have lots of problems, but I love my problems. Too many people are trying to eliminate problems, but here's the thing: you can never actually eliminate all your problems, but what you can do is you can upgrade them. So, what does that mean, right? So, a typical problem that we hear from advisors before they join our community is I don't have enough meetings or I don't have enough clients. But then after working with them and then they get involved in the community and things start to come together, then their problem becomes, well, now I have too many meetings. And I would argue that's a good problem to have. And I'd rather have the second problem than the first problem because now it means that you've moved from a marketing problem and a prospecting problem to a capacity problem. So then we have to teach you how to optimize your calendar, potentially raise your fees, tighten the fit to make sure it's the right client that you want to be working with. Maybe even add some help, like an associate, for instance, or an assistant, or maybe even add a junior to pre-qualify those prospects before they actually make it to you. But again, different problems, better outcomes. That's the goal, right? So you should not be chasing a problem-free business. What you should be chasing is better problems. So, Andy, as I mentioned, I have problems, but I love my problems. Andy?
Yeah, absolutely. And, if you don't have problems, and a former boss of mine said, don't use the word problem, use the word challenge. If you are not having challenges, that means you're not growing. If you're not facing those challenges, you're staying where you are, you're staying stagnant. It's really important to push yourself, even just a little bit each and every day, to get out of your comfort zone and do something new. And referrals is absolutely the place to start because we all have those clients, especially the hardest ones that we got as clients that we worked hard and we're really that challenger client. Those people end up becoming your biggest cheerleader. I know this personally because I got one of those early in my days and it changed everything for me. This guy was a hard ass, right? In terms of believing things and being skeptical. Why? Not because he was a jerk. He was just very smart. In fact, he knew more than me. But because I listened, I acknowledged, and I just asked him to consider looking at something different, that trust built, that rapport built. He became a client, and he eventually, to date, has referred me 30 quality, excellent clients. And they all came in super hot saying, hey, if this guy recommended you, that's all we need. We know we can trust you. Let's get going. So let's wrap it all up here, Ermos, with a couple more slides, and then let people get back to their day.
Sure, and this is probably my favorite part coming up. Let's get through this part here. So, I mean, there's the three pillars that work: the referrals, the cold outreach, the follow-ups. Um, Again, what you need to do is run them simply, precisely, and most importantly, on repeat. Small daily actions is what's going to fill your calendar, not necessarily sporadic sprints. Now, let's talk about the fear of rejection because this is a big one, and this is what knocks a lot of advisors out of our industry. So, fear of rejection is fixable by setting proper goals. Most advisors set a goal, for instance, to book a certain amount of meetings. So they're going to sit down and they're going to make calls for, I don't know, half an hour, 2 hours, and then they have a goal in mind. And the goal is, I want to set X amount of meetings. Well, this creates anxiety, and I'll tell you why. Because you, as an advisor, are no longer in control of the outcome. Believe it or not, it takes two people. It takes two people to book a meeting: the advisor, you, and the prospect. So even if you did everything absolutely right, said all the right things, there's still no guarantee that the prospect is going to say yes to the meeting. And this is going to create frustration and anxiety, which in turn makes it less likely that the advisor is going to make more calls, right? Because now they're feeling down. However, setting a goal for a number of dials, for instance, means that you are 100% in control of that goal. So if you set a goal to make 100 dials, for instance, and you make 100 dials, give yourself a pat in the back. Congratulations, you won the day. Regardless of how many meetings you booked, you are a winner that day. So the lesson here is this: you need to detach yourself from the outcome. And once you're able to detach yourself from the outcome, that is an absolute game changer for advisors because you remove a lot of the anxiety. When you are attached to the sale or the booked meeting, people can smell your commission breath a mile away. So expect nothing, focus on your actions and not the actual results. The less you care about making the sale, the more sales you will make. Sounds crazy, but I'm going to repeat it. The less you care about making the sale, the more sales you will make. I see this all the time. Andy?
Yeah, and just statistically, advisors who maintain consistent prospecting see 33% higher revenue growth than those who prospect sporadically, right? If you think about an analogy of like, I don't know, brushing your teeth, right? You don't just do it once for an hour here and there. You do it daily in small doses. If you're trying to lose weight, you don't set some crazy goal like losing 30 pounds in a month and fast and do all these crazy fad diets. I think a healthy weight loss is something like 2 pounds a week. So set realistic goals that are not going to disappoint you, that you're not going to be giving you anxiety, not going to making you feel like a sense of failure. You show up every day, you do these things, and you pat yourself on the back at the end of the day, and you're like, okay, I just got to do this again tomorrow. So don't aim for perfection, don't aim for speed. Aim for consistency and momentum. It compounds faster than you think, right? Sometimes you got to go slow to go fast or do boring things for exciting things to happen. Um, I have put into the chat there a link to join school. Please do yourself a favor. If you haven't already, go join school. There's lots of free content in there. When you go in there, you're going to see a join button. I've got the little arrow marked off there. You just hit there. Uh, you sign up, and now you'll have access to the whole community. You can see we have almost 500 members in there. I'm sure after this webinar, we'll be well above it. That's a lot of people that you can tap into for ideas, feedback. You can throw all kinds of things in there. We actually have a weekly coaching call that's for CA members that basically is kind of like a ask us anything type of theme. So it could be anything. It could be about what we talked about here. It could be other things as well. And just remember that the next three in this particular series, the referrals, the prospecting, and the cold outreach, those webinars will only be available to CAA members. So there won't be this global one that gets sent out on LinkedIn and Facebook and wherever into the interwebs here. You need to be a member of CAA, and you'll be able to watch those there, as well as the replay of this webinar. Ermos, any final parting words, or let's wrap this baby up?
let's wrap this baby up. I'm very excited for this series. This is going to help a lot of advisors really turn their business around. You should be looking at least doubling, if not tripling, your conversion rates once you're done with this mini series, and that is. Well, obviously, I can't guarantee that, but I can assure you that's typically the results that we get. That advisors will double or triple their conversion rates when they go through this program. Andy?
Amazing. Great to see you again, Ermos. Thanks for giving us some of your time. Look out for those in CAA and for our next big top of the funnel webinar, which will be probably in about a month's time. But in between, you can come in and see the individual webinars on each one of these three pillars in CAA. All right, guys, take care. Have a great day.